Is this episode 20?
This is episode 20.
Oh, wow. Yeah, dude, that's badass.
And welcome back to the CODESHO podcast, everybody. Episode freaking 20.
That's amazing. I'm so excited.
Super, super cool. And I'm really excited for 52.
Yeah,
One solid year.
that'd be great.
Yes. This episode, we kind of tend to over talk about junior development. And we're going to do it a little bit more this episode, but that's not really the core topic of conversation. The thing that we want to talk about is working overtime, which for some reason tends to apply a little bit more to junior developers. Yeah. We're going to talk about what that looks like, whether or not it's worth doing, whether or not you should push back. So I guess to kind of kick off the conversation, when you were doing your first job, when you were at DigiPen, well, I know for a fact that you did for sure do a lot of work outside of DigiPen, like when you were at the bar, whenever you were at home or whatever.
Yeah.
But in terms of like actual overtime.
Oh, well, when I first worked at DigiPen, when we got hired to teach in Singapore, the actual job was teaching 6 hours a day.
Okay.
Right? Like literally in class 6 hours a day. It ended up being like the same students. That didn't include time for grading or like updating the project and stuff like that. So that was my day. But then almost immediately they had us also teaching these like certification courses. I called them workshops because in the end I didn't think it was worth that much. It would be like a month-long iOS development course or a month-long C++ course. So like
okay.
you can't really learn C++ in a month, 3 hours a day. So but that was it. So I was working, I think my class was 8 until 4 or something like that. Which actually that might even be 8 hours. But like my official hours were like 8 until 4, and then the late night class was from 7 until 10.
Okay.
And so I was doing that for almost.
I mean, that's like 11 hours.
Yeah, that was my normal job.
Oh, jeez. At DigiPen.
At DigiPen, we were working a ton.
And was that considered overtime?
I mean, I was salary, so no. I mean, like,
jeez.
Yeah.
Well, and you also weren't here. Like you weren't in the States, right? Or
I was in Singapore at that time.
Right, you were in Singapore,
Yeah.
And I don't know if the overtime laws are different there, but I think even in the U.S., if you are salary, if you're consistently working like over.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I think that there's like some obligation for the employer. I mean, there's like these like I don't know if they're considered like lawsuits or whatever, but these things come up all the time where like some employee will make a fuss about. Actually, a funny story. Not that long ago. Maybe like 6 months ago or something, I got a check in the mail from Sutherland, I don't remember what their name, like Sutherland Corp or something like that. And this was a job that I worked at for maybe like 3 months. It was like a call center. I worked there when I was like 17 or something like that. Taking phone calls for AT&T, trying to fix people's phones and their security systems and stuff. Anyways, I got a check in the mail from Sutherland for like 64 cents or something like that. And I was like, or maybe it was more. Maybe it was like $6 or something like that.
Was this from some lawsuit? Is that where you're going with this?
Yeah, exactly. Because some employee had made a fuss about how we were required to come in. We had to like swipe our badge, which swiping your badge, I guess, should have signified like.
That's like the clock in time.
You're on the clock, right? And between that time and the time that you actually got to your computer and then signed in, because you had to sign into this portal and then click that you logged in or whatever, and that system was brutally slow. Like it would take like 6 minutes just to log in. It would just sit there and load and load and load and load and load and load. And that like 6 minutes we weren't getting paid for, but we were expected to be clocked in at our scheduled time. At 9 or whatever
it is, yeah.
So that like 6 minutes we have to prepare to be there a little bit early. So anyways, I got this check in the mail for like $6 or something like that because the overtime laws say that's a little bit different because that wasn't salary. I'm pretty sure that was hourly, but
So
go ahead.
I'll clarify a little bit. I as I recall, those night classes were only 4 days a week. And then also,
only? That's the majority of the week.
Yeah, that's true. And also, it wasn't. It was tough, but it wasn't actually like back to back the way that my other class was. So I think that there were months where I wasn't actually doing that for like the 2 years. But I did it a lot. Definitely.
I mean, this makes it sound even more like you should have been paid for it. Especially like if your normal average work week is like 8 to 4, and then occasionally we drop in this 3-hour course at night.
Yeah.
Especially when there's a break from 4 to 7. That's brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, that's awful.
So it was tough, but my attitude is always like, I'm not going to do this forever. I've been saying this. So this was also my first job after going to school. At school, we were just there 12 hours a day anyway for studying.
Yeah.
So we were used to that. But then before that, I was installing the mirrors and shower doors, and I think I was maybe making, let's say, $24,000 a year, something like that. I think that's what my paycheck was. We were getting overtime if we had to for that job. Then I went to school for 4 years, and this is my first job out of school, and I think I started at like 72,000. And because I was living overseas, I didn't have to pay taxes on that. Like, we were filing.
So crazy.
Yeah, so it was nice. They were paying for our housing. It was brutal, but still my attitude was always, and it has since worked out. Some of those classes that I taught were iOS development, right? Mobile development.
Yeah.
What am I doing now? I'm doing mobile development, right? The other thing was, because I was working so hard for them, when the opportunity came to go to Korea, my bosses loved me, right? And so I actually, on my own time, I was learning Korean, like while I was in Singapore, and I was just like trying to make it happen. And then when that opportunity came up, somebody said, "Hey, I heard you're learning Korean. Like, would you be interested in going?" And I said, "Yeah, I wanted to talk with you about that." So I was able to make that transition easier because of that.
Yeah. How old were you at the time?
In my later 20s. I don't remember. It was like 27 or 28 when I started in Singapore.
Okay. Well, the Korean paid off, obviously. You got a awesome Korean wife.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, took us this last weekend to go get some Korean chicken in LA. And I'm talking about it on the podcast. It was so good. I'm just saying, if you haven't tried it yet, you got to go to some Korean chicken place. And it's not because, like, the thing was, I was telling a buddy about it. We're so off topic here. Yeah. But he was telling me, he's like, "Oh, you went to have, like, Korean barbecue?" Because that's what everybody thinks of. No, this is different. This is something completely different.
It's different, yeah.
Go give it a shot. Anyways, the Korean paid off.
Yeah.
So the thing is, before we kind of started, we were looking at these two articles, which I'm going to put in the description. One of these articles, it's actually really interesting because this person kind of makes this very quick little post about, like, what do you think? Do you regret doing it?
Yeah. Should junior developers work overtime, and do you regret it?
Yeah. So I kind of want to just skim through a couple of the comments here, and we'll just kind of talk about it a little bit.
The comments seem to be really good.
Yeah, the comments are really good. I want to find this one. Okay. Here's a good conversation starter. So this girl, blah, 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 says all this stuff. She says she leads a team of junior developers. In general, I think she says that sometimes it's unavoidable, but in general, we should try to, like, not overwork people. So here's the comment that I think we can talk about a little bit. She says, regarding overtime work, I do think some overtime is unavoidable in development, especially in certain kinds of roles and companies, but junior developers should feel comfortable to stand up to managers and say no. So the thing that I'll say to kind of kick it off is, while I agree with the general sentiment that, like, you have no obligation to do overtime, and we certainly shouldn't, like, put some pressure on people to do that. Like, you can choose whether or not you want to do it. But here's the reality. You live in a world where, especially in the junior development world, there is some fierce competition.
You're competing because you don't have the skills. Like, you can't compete on skills.
Right.
All you can compete on is work ethic.
Right. I mean, and so the thing is, like, I don't know what to say other than, if you take a $30,000 or $40,000 salary and you're going to work 40 hours a week, but this guy's going to work 60 hours a week, like, as a boss, you're going to pay the other guy. You're going to get the 60-hour work week guy. So I agree. You should feel comfortable saying no. Like, you shouldn't be scared to say no, and you should know what you're worth. Like, I'm really big on that, especially as you grow and as you become bigger as a developer. Know what you're worth. Know when to push back. But in your early days, like, the thing that you were bringing up before the podcast is, like, just sacrifice some pay for some time. Invest in yourself. And
I think that people look at it wrong all the time. People get upset because we've mentioned this about unpaid internships. What do you think going to college is anyway?
Yeah.
It's worse than an unpaid internship. You are paying for it.
Yeah, negative pay.
Yeah. And you know, people say, "Well, you get a degree." Yeah, okay, dum-dum. You're not paying for the I get feisty about this topic. You're not paying for the degree because you can fail out of it, right? The thing that you're really paying for, and I used to strive, like, to drill this into my students, you're paying for the opportunity to learn with people. It is an apprenticeship. It's a
Yep.
it's a paid internship, but you're the one paying. So if you finally get some professional job, and I don't know, maybe they're overworking you, like, or maybe you're purposely doing extra. Don't focus on it like, oh, they're like cheating me. Focus it on how much you're getting.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that was always my attitude, and it has been, and I've grown because of that, where it is investing in me. I'm spending that time. I now get to put this real thing on my resume. If you just make your own app, maybe if you make the next Uber, then that would have been more worth it. But if you just sit and make your own app, or like even this game engine that I made, nobody really cares that I made that game engine. I think it's cool, and I want us to use it.
Yeah.
But what's more valuable, the fact that I made these professional projects for these big companies, or I made this cool like engine on the side? I think that engine on the side is cool, but it's not worth anything right now. So people don't necessarily look at it.
So what is the point that you're trying to make with that specifically?
Well, I think that
Because I don't think we want to discourage people from doing side projects.
that's fair. You will learn stuff from both. So there's nothing wrong with doing this other one, right? Like with doing the side project. I obviously did it and I like it. But recognize that if you are doing overtime or working extra hours for this other company, or going in on the weekends, which I did voluntarily at one of my companies, that's actually worth more to you in the long run. And what I always say is, if this company doesn't pay you more, the next one will.
Yeah.
You might sit at this current company because you're learning. That's the thing, is it's not the same as digging ditches, and we can talk about your buddy. But like you're gaining knowledge and you're building real life things that you can then take to your next interview.
Yeah. Well, especially in the beginning, and I did this too. Like when I was in college and when I was in my first few jobs, it was all about maximizing my growth in that period of time. Like if I'm in college I struggled with, and I'll be honest about that. That's not. If I could go back and do it again, there's a lot that I would have done differently in college to maximize what I learned and to maximize the experience. I for sure would have networked way better because it's free. It's not free. You're paying for it.
That's one of the things that you're paying for when you go to college is
it's
networking.
like nothing is more frustrating than when you pay for something that includes all of these things and you don't use all of it. Like you just throw it away. So in college, that's a really good opportunity. In this case, we're talking about junior development, which I can speak to this because I did this too. I mean, I was putting a ton of pressure at my first job on my bosses and all the people that I work with. Like, let me do this. Let me work on this thing. I want to take on this extra work. Like, and people would even say like, well, we shouldn't commit to that much work. That's too much. I don't care. Like, just let me. I want to do this. Like, in one little thing that I did at my first job, we had like 9 like data entry people, and there was like some part of the process that doesn't matter. It was slowing them down, and they needed like a little resource that could help them input information quicker and, you know, maximize their output or whatever. But it was not an initiative that the boss thought was valuable. They were cheap labor, I guess. They were like $10 an hour. So he's like, just hire more. Like it's fine. I don't want you to, we have other things over here. The app, the website, they need more attention than that does. But I was like, just let me take this on. Like, I'll do it in my free time. So I built up this little portal, and like the thing was, that little portal that I built, it required a whole lot of configuration. I had to spin up like a little Node.js server and a little API, and I had to like set up the server and everything. So I learned a bunch in the process. And sure, that is something that I could have done on my free time, but it wouldn't have actually had any real world value. And I think that's the other thing is, when you're trying to build a little project in your free time, you kind of struggle to find something that's actually worth doing. Like something
that's a good way to put it, yeah.
And so that was absolutely worth doing, and I wanted to deliver it to see the impact of it. So I had to finish it too.
And you have to finish it. You can't cut corners,
right,
to a certain extent, right?
Yeah, and it had a real world application that was actually going to deliver value to these people. And I also took their feedback. I adjusted it based on that. And again, this was my first little play at like DevOps and like spinning up a server, and like it was even my first little experience with backend, working on like a little Node.js app. And so I just learned a ton along the way, and it was free. And that was a good example of me trying.
They paid you to do it.
They paid me.
It's better than free now. They paid you to do it.
It might have been free over time.
Oh, I see.
But still, but I mean, the point is that like that, whether or not I was paid, that was an opportunity to maximize that experience and get as much personal growth as I could out of it. And I did. I mean, that was like a really big deal. Like that really helped me kind of get my first little entry into
Yeah.
DevOps and
And
back
then
end development.
and then when you go to your next, again, if your current boss doesn't pay you for that, like over the long run, if you don't get a promotion or more money, you can take that to your next interview. Or I mean, what some people do is you could just lie in your next interview and just say that you did more. But again, I think that's going to catch up to you. That
Well,
would be my
and that
advice.
develops imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The better thing to do is say, no, I really built this thing. We had this repetitive task. You can tell that in the next interview, and then
You're right, and it has a measurable success rate, if you
Yeah.
will. Like I can go into the next interview and say like, "Oh, I was able to calculate that we saved X number of dollars because we whatever." And yeah, like not only do you get to have an application that was worth doing, but like if I would have done that application on the side, uh, bringing that into an interview and saying like, "Oh, I built this little thing," like nobody's going to take that seriously. But
not
when
as
you
much.
attach it to a job, now
Yeah.
that becomes like a real
Yeah.
talking point. That becomes a real point of experience that you can talk about. The little side project, like that's why I have a little projects part in my resume, but I don't really expect anybody to take that seriously, and nobody's actually like,
Nobody's ever asked me about any of the side stuff I've done.
yeah, nobody's talked
If,
to me in
if you
depth.
have real jobs,
Right.
they ask about those.
Yeah. They ask about the skills that you put there. Yeah, if I have a little side project, people just
Yeah.
aren't even. That's why it's like the smallest part of my resume at the very end. So, anyways, I guess the point is, yeah, junior developers, they should feel comfortable standing up and saying no. If you have things going on in your personal life, I get it. But like, really, if you have the time, this is the time to maximize. Because look at it this way. If I can 2x my personal growth every single day that I come into my junior developer job, instead of it taking 4 years to get out of junior development, it can take me 2. And that constant effort that you put in every day to learn twice as much as you would have if you just stopped
Yeah.
at 5 o'clock,
Yeah.
that's going to pay off in years.
Yeah. I can't even you can it's a real thing that you can like double or triple your salary. Like
Oh,
and you-
yeah.
I mean like, and I'm not even talking about compared to when I was doing like the construction stuff, which I think obviously like the numbers I said, once I learned programming, I like doubled my salary
Yeah.
from that. But since then, my salary has been growing at a good rate. It's not a linear growth, right? There's jumps, but even between the current job where we work, I don't know how much numbers we want to say. Like,
I'm fine
yeah,
with it.
I increased my like from that first job in Vegas to right now is like $30,000.
Yeah.
Like that's almost a whole person's salary, right?
Right, yeah.
And it was because they looked at me because I was like a teacher, but they looked at me as a junior dev. And to be fair, I wasn't a junior dev. You could call me junior in the mobile space, but I had known about programming, so I picked it up pretty quick. But still, that's fair. I was junior at that, but I worked hard, and I was coming in on the weekends to do iOS as well. So every job that I ever got hired for was Android, but every job I've done has had some iOS component.
Yeah.
Right, which is also the classes that I taught overtime in Singapore. So like it has been building, and you can just get crazy growth if you just work hard.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess when I was very lucky to get into programming early. So I got in, my first job, I guess, was at 18 years old, like a right fresh adult.
Yeah,
and
that's
I
awesome.
and I just got really lucky. Like I don't know why, man. I just thought these developers got hired at my job, and I was already kind of learning, and I was in college. I started college actually at 16. I went to this like school where you can actually go to the community college and get high school and college credit for it. They weren't even like AP classes. They were actually like going to college. So that also helped boost me like 2 years. Like instead of starting at 18, I got to start at 16. So I was already kind of learning programming. Wasn't sure. I was like, yeah, this is cool. Maybe I'm going to like it. Maybe I'm not. And then at my job, when we hired all of these app developers, I was like, those guys are badass. Like, that's cool. Like, I love the conversations that they're having. That just seems so cool to me. And it was like, when people talk about programming, it's like there's almost like a mysticism to it, like because nobody understands it. Like I can go talk to somebody about digging ditches and understand your job. Like it's like not that I'm trying to take away from
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
but
yeah.
like it's not mystical. It's not like when you talk about programming, people just have no
How
idea
do
what you're
computers
talking
work?
about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even know that. Ones and zeros.
And I just think this is off topic, but I just think engineering in general is cool because as a software engineer, it translates into so many other types of engineering in life. I have a huge appreciation for all sorts of engineering. My aunt is a civil engineer, and that's really cool too. I mean, a lot of the same, like, yeah, it's weird how like they kind of cross, like they kind of. So, anyways, it just gives you, I guess, this cool outlook on the world. But I just thought like the way that they solved problems, the way that they thought, it felt like me. It felt like that's what I do.
Oh, interesting.
And it just like clicked. It was like that's what I need to do.
Yeah.
And actually, there was two guys that I met at my first job, and I just remember thinking like all through grade school and all through high school, I was just like, I'm like my brain works differently than people. Like I just don't think like them. Like I think you do too. But meeting those two guys and them being also personable, really easy to talk to, cool guys, I was just like, y'all think like me. Like I've never met anybody that thought like me. Like everybody in high school thought differently. Like it takes a special brain to be a software engineer, I think. And so now I've been exposed to a lot more people, including you, and I just think like we understand each other. Like it's so cool to have these conversations and understand. Man, I'll be like this. I know I'm getting all nostalgic, but like I'll sit in a conversation with somebody, even at work. I had a conversation with this guy Matt, one of the newer guys that we just hired, and we're just sitting there talking back and forth, trying to triage this problem that he's having. And it just had this cool moment in the middle of it where I was like, this is just so cool that we understand each other. And to nearly everybody on the planet, this is a foreign language. They just have no idea what we're talking about. Yeah. Anyways, so I just thought that was cool. But like right then at 18 years old, when I noticed that, I was like, okay, I'm going to get into this quick.
That's
like, and the guy, I talked to Simon too, because he was there as well. That was much later though. And he was telling me like how much money he made and like how much some of the other guys were probably making, and then I was like looking up averages and stuff, and I was like, oh yeah, like I got to get there because like where I'm at, I think at the time I was making like $15 an hour or something like that. And so just like for perspective, in a matter of 5 or 6 years, I'm almost 24, so in like just 6 years, we could say I quadrupled my salary nearly.
Yeah, because you were probably making, I think when I was working construction, I was making like $14 an hour, and I think it averaged out to like 24,000.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't salary, but that was.
Yes, yeah, I think I nearly quadrupled it. And it also is crazy for me to think about. I worked at McDonald's for almost 2 years when I was like 15, 16. And I just think now too, like I think I make more money now than the whole group of people did that worked at any given shift. And like that's an insane thing to think about too, just like how much. And I think there's something cool about that, not just to like gloat about how much money you make, but it's also like cool to think like I bring that much value to a company. Like
but this is where because you've always been a hard worker, based on your stories, because we didn't know each other always, but like I bet even at McDonald's, didn't you say you were like a shift lead or something like that? But yeah, it's like when you work even at McDonald's, I worked at Godfather's for 7 years, you are learning skills. It's not just a waste of time.
Oh,
right?
no.
Like you learn responsibility, you learn how to do tasks. As you grow a little bit, you learn how to manage and lead people.
Yeah.
And like those are skills that do compound. And that's why if you've worked at, I mean, I don't put Godfathers on my resume now, like my programming resume, but like those were skills that it was also just that little snowball that was rolling. And I used to take, it was the same kind of thing where I would just take whatever shift. Yeah. Give it to me.
Yeah, I actually, I don't know if this is like controversial, but I think the biggest mistake that a parent can make is not to have their child work at 15 or 16 years old. Like you got to start as early as you can. And my parents, like I did start working at 15. I had to get like a work permit because like I think the minimum age is like 16, but you can get a permit to work at like 14, 15. And at 15 years old, I got a job at a nursery, at like a plant nursery, and that didn't last very long though. But then I got my job at McDonald's, and if I ever become like a billionaire one day, I'm seriously going to write a book about how the best job I ever had was McDonald's, because that job solidified for me like, okay, I have to work hard. I'm sorry if it upsets people, but I got to get out of here. Like I have to make more money than this. I can't sustain a life off of this. And that's a big controversy in the world. And my view on that is like, let's not even argue about whether or not it's right that you can't support a family off that salary. The reality is that you can't support a family off of that salary, and I'm not doing that. Like, I'm going to figure out a way to get around that. And like, I talk to a lot of people that again, I hope this doesn't come off as like gloating, but they think it's really cool that I am where I'm at in my programming career at a young age. And I'm just like, y'all don't understand. Like, you see me
You've
here.
still been doing it since 16.
Yeah, that's true. But also, like, during the last 6 years or so that I've been actually working and doing it, I'm just trying to maximize the work that I do. I want to it's been 6 years, but I want it to be 12 years worth of growth or 18 years worth of growth. I'm going to just put in everything I can.
Your story is one that has paid off or is paying off. Like, and you're not necessarily done, right?
Of course not.
That snowball is growing. Even Patrick had the same story. Like, that's why we brought him on, was because he graduated from college. I guess he wasn't good enough to be a normal programmer, so he went into QA. He's been working hard. He's been doing extra stuff, learning programming on the side, always doing side projects, taking over some of our iOS duties, and then got hired. Like, now it's official that he's an iOS dev. That's on his resume now, right? For a professional company. That's awesome.
Yeah, my dad always told me when I was a kid, he said, you need to work hard now so you don't have to later. And I just always rung with me. I'm like, I don't want to be like, I'm watching all my friends busting their backs right now, and I'm going to do the same thing right now. But by the time I'm 30, 40, especially when I'm 50, 60, I don't want to be breaking my back to put food on the table. I know a guy, I respect him to death. His name's Dan. He was actually kind of like a grandfather to me. He lived like 2 doors down from my parents when I was in high school. And at one point I lived with him and his wife, and his grandson was my best friend, but I lived with them for like 6 or 7 months or something like that while my parents were in Texas and I was here, whatever. But anyways, I watched that guy. He was like 73 or 74 when I lived with him. He's like 80 something now. And he still works to this day. They call him Cowboy at his job. He works at the Bally's Casino. And he also had 2 jobs. He worked at the Bally's Casino, and he also had a pest control business where he would drive around and spray whatever. What do they call them? Pesticides. Not pesticides.
Is it not that? I don't know.
I think that's for plants. Anyways, you know what I mean. He would go around, and the guy just busted his back. Like, he worked so hard, and he was like 74 at the time, and he just stopped doing the pest control stuff like a year or 2 ago. I respect him to death, but I'm just like, I don't want to be doing that and he would tell us that too. He would say, you guys need to work super hard so you're not doing what I'm doing. He said, Social Security is not enough to pay these bills. I have to continue to work, and I'm going to work till the day I die, or until Bally's kicks me out. But yeah, he's like 80 something. He still works at Bally's. So anyways, I want to be comfy when I'm 50, 60.
Now is the time to build it up.
Yeah.
And, I was talking with my buddy, one of the guys that I lived with in Singapore. I talked to him recently. I've told a story about him before where he was only in Singapore for about a year. He didn't like it. He wanted to become a game designer. I mean, that's what we went to school for. There was this one weekend, I think I mentioned, where the bosses wanted him to make a level editor for some game they were making in the U.S. And he stayed in the office like all weekend.
Yeah.
All weekend. Working on this, and he loved it, and he included the game. He rebuilt the game into the tool so that he could test it out.
That's cool.
And so I was telling him about that, and he was like, "Yeah, I wouldn't do that now."
Yeah,
because now he's a 10-year game design veteran. Like, he works for PopCap Games. I'm gonna try to get him on the podcast. Actually, hopefully he'll come on. But
what's his name again?
Randy.
Randy. Okay.
Yeah. Really cool guy. So hopefully he'll come on. But like, that's the thing is now. He has because he kind of said it, and I don't remember his exact words, but like, he says, I don't have trouble getting a job.
Yeah.
Because he's been doing it for 10 years.
And that's what you want.
Yeah. But at the beginning, you don't
right.
Like, and so that's the hard part. So like, he says, I don't do crunch or whatever. He's like, I mean, I will if it's absolutely necessary for this section of like this like predetermined time before the launch, but if it's going to be a crunch, if the whole time we're in the office is going to be crunch, I'm just not going to do it. I can find a job somewhere else. And so, like, as you build up your reputation and your skill and your titles and your skills, right? Like, that's the most important part. Then you can maybe, like, ease off the gas if that's what you want to do. He's married, he has kids, so that all makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But he did like work hard. He worked really hard when he was young. He was a smart guy.
And I mean, that's the thing is like
Still
when
is.
you're young and you don't have kids and you don't have a bunch of obligations yet,
Yeah.
like just use that time because it's very short-sighted to try to do that later. Like whenever more responsibilities are going to come up, more things are going to come up. The future is unpredictable, but right now you know that you have the means to do it, so do it.
Yeah, and I think I like the fact that both me and you are on this podcast because our paths are different, but we're kind of in the same place. You're actually my lead, right? So so you're even like as a younger person, you are ahead of me.
We say that, but I've never acted like that.
I know.
It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah. That's fine.
I don't think I've ever barked orders at you ever.
You certainly haven't. Yeah. But that's my whole point. If we're talking strictly age, that's because I was goofing off more when I was young. I was wasting time. Maybe doing some of the band stuff wasn't necessarily a waste of time, but obviously I don't do music these days. And so if you have passion about music, I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that, but also maybe figure out what other skills that you can gain.
Yeah.
Because I'm happy with where I'm at, but we're like more than 10 years apart, I think.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. So when you're my age,
13, 14
something like that.
apart.
When you're my age, you're going to be even further, and that's going to be awesome.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'd better get to work. That was also why when I came to Vegas, I knew that nobody really cared about my teaching experience. So I said, time to get to work. I told that to my wife. I said, time to get to work.
Yeah. I think too, whenever you're at these jobs, for every like monumental personal growth milestone that I think I've achieved, it was never like I did put in a bunch of work, and that I guess that helped with like my expertise about something. But as far as like just actual personal growth, it's always come from another person. Like I've been able to feed something off of somebody else. I feel very fortunate to have met you. I think the monumental milestone that I think I've made just in the last 2 years of knowing you is you have like all of this, like it's weird how much, how do I phrase this? Let me think about how to phrase this. It's kind of insane how much, like, I'm not going to call it street knowledge. That's lame. Like you have learned so much about just like dealing with people from reading books.
Well, when I was, and we've talked about this a little bit. I was reading How to Win Friends and Influence People when I was in high school.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was.
But the thing is, like, so you'll in life you'll meet super charismatic people, super confident people, successful people because they exhibit these characteristics naturally or whatever. My mic is so low right now. I feel like I'm like breaking
It's like not tight. I don't know why.
There we go. That's better. You'll meet these people and they come across it naturally. Maybe their parents were like that or they were surrounded by people. You've learned all this stuff from books, which is really cool. I really struggle to read books because, like, I think it's just my ADD brain. I can only do, like, 5-minute sprints when I read books of, like, actual paying attention or even listening to them. Like, it was like a month or two ago, but I finished listening back through, like, Extreme Ownership, and it was just this constant, like, rewind because, like, I just lose it. Like, even if I'm, like, going on a walk in the morning and I'm just, like, the whole goal of this is to shut out the world, walk and listen. Mm-hmm. Just after like 5 minutes, I'm just like, I'm not listening. Like I can't, it's so hard for me.
What are you thinking about? Are you thinking about not the book? Or are you thinking about, cause so like the reason I ask, and then you can answer, I'm not 100. This is why I listen to it at like 2 or 3 times speed. And this is why I re-listen to books a lot, because certainly as I'm walking, I'm not 100% listening to the book. I do try, but then sometimes, especially on my second or third listen, I'll get some nugget, and what I do is I'll try to apply it to my life.
Mm-hmm.
And then so sometimes I'll pause, but sometimes I certainly don't pause.
Do you mean you'll hear something and then you'll try to relate that to something in your life?
Yeah, like either a situation where I messed up or a situation like where I could do better or something, or like a situation, how would I deal with that in the future? So it's more like active learning, but certainly I miss pieces. Right?
I think that's a good idea because I think I do that.
Yeah.
Actually, I know I do that because, like listening through Extreme Ownership, like there's just tons of like very, like profound messages or whatever in the book. And so like I'll be listening to one and I'll be like, oh my God, that's such a big deal. Like that definitely applies to this part of my life. And then I'll start thinking about that. And then I miss the next 5 minutes of what he's talking about because I'm thinking about that.
Yeah.
Maybe what I should do is just pause the book.
I pause a lot. Like back when in May when we had that launch that didn't go super well at work, I was listening to all of the Jocko books and thinking about the situation that we were in at that time.
Yeah.
And so, like it's not 100% listening to every single word. It is getting the concepts, but then I think one of the problems is that maybe when I was younger, I would read books and then I would read books to read the book, and I would get like here's the 6 steps to do this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't necessarily apply it, and I don't apply it to my past situations or like current or future situations. So I think it's more, I try to be at least active. Like I don't know what you would call that. Like, cause it's not active listening. I'm just trying to relate it to my life.
Yeah. I need to do that, but I need to pause or something because like the other thing that I'll do is like I'll visualize the scenario. And
just pause it.
I need to just pause it. Like listening to the beginning of Extreme Ownership where he's talking about like the actual battle that was going on in Ramadi where the guys are shooting each other in the building. My brain just starts visualizing that actual scenario, and then like I start like my brain will just go crazy just like thinking about like how did this happen. Like how it happened is not really actually a big part of the book. He doesn't really talk too much about how it happened. You know what I mean? Like from like a detailed perspective, like literally how did these guys go out and not communicate to and like that's what I start thinking about. Like, well, because Jocko doesn't he takes ownership for it, but in the book he doesn't talk about really how they solved the problem. He does from like a really high level, like, but not really like detailed, like how would we actually solve that problem. And so like my brain starts thinking about that, and I'm like, this isn't even the point of the book. Plus I'm not in the military, so why am I thinking about this? But anyways, the point of me mentioning this at all is, yes, take advantage of the extra time that you have when you're young to develop your expertise, but also really form relationships with people because those relationships can have an even bigger impact at times than the actual technical expertise can. Just learning how to deal with people, learning to drop your ego. I had a massive ego, I think, before I met you, and like just maybe it's a combination of things, but meeting you has definitely helped me like lower that.
You always said that people thought you were a jerk.
People still think I'm a jerk.
That's fair, but like, I guess I didn't see it. I don't know. I'm rereading a book by Ryan Holiday called Ego is the Enemy. And every time I listen to it, I forget how good it was and how good it is. It's like Ryan Holiday wrote a bunch of books, but 2 really good books is The Obstacle is the Way, like how to deal with challenges, and then Ego is the Enemy. And both of these books together are great. He wrote a third one called Stillness is the Key. I listened to it once. I didn't like it as much. Maybe I should go back.
Yeah. I think we read that one at work, right? And there was one day, didn't we? That was one of the ones that we read at work.
No.
It wasn't?
Unless it was before me. I know that the original office assistant, she had that on her desk when I first applied.
Okay.
So I knew the book, but nobody else had it on their desk. So I don't know. Maybe before I came, you guys read it? But
I have a problem where, because that was one of the ones that I had listened to the audiobook, but I have this problem where I think it's like a good idea to put the audiobook on while I'm working, and that I just really missed the whole book. Like you can't do it.
Not with programming.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I'll be doing like brain dead tasks, and I've done that. I've every now and then like it'll be like data entry, I guess. That's what I call it. It's like if you're I've just had this at a couple of different jobs. Every now and then there'll be something where like the task isn't solving problems. The task is, okay, just do this thing.
Monotonous. Like.
Yeah. And so in that case, I'll listen to books at work, but almost never. You can't. Sometimes I can't even listen to music. If I'm in the middle of solving a problem, I have to pause the music and just focus on like the best way to solve this problem or whatever.
That's why my programming music is like, they call it like chill step or synthwave or whatever, because there's just no words. It's just like sounds that are kind of soothing, and that's what I do because I'm the same way. Like if there's like lyrics and stuff, like they'll throw me off.
Yeah.
I like on my YouTube, I'm always looking up no lyric music or no lyric chill step or no lyric whatever.
Chill step. I'm gonna check that out. I didn't know.
Yeah, chill step is like my favorite because it's just this like sort of, usually it's like this sort of jazzy, kind of like just real mellow, like calm music. So I listen to that all the time. Anyways, moving on from that topic, I kind of want to go through like maybe 2 or 3 more of these little comments so we can kind of talk
Okay,
about them
cool,
a little
cool.
bit. The next one, I should have been looking for it.
Yeah, what did the guy say? The guy said, "Who you gonna promote?" Is that the one you're looking for?
Did we talk about that before? Like before we started?
Yeah, before we started.
Let me see.
Was that one of the quotes? Like you're still
Oh,
talking about the overtime, right?
yep, this is the one.
Cool,
Thank you
cool,
for
cool.
reminding me.
Cool.
Okay, so this other guy says,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No. Just this is still a quote from that same article.
Yes, but
Yeah.
this is, well,
Or not,
what we're reading is the comments.
It's a
Yeah.
comment. Yeah.
This is a different person. Just for context, there's like 2 little sections. I'm gonna read both of them. I do like overtime a lot, mainly because I'm the boss, but also because I love my work. Do I regret that? Yes, because I think I should spend more time with my family as well. Sometimes you have to make adjustments and changes and constantly try to balance things out. Here is my take on overtime. I appreciate people who are passionate about what they do. Most people just work for the money. They don't care about learning new things, perfecting their skills, etc. For them, work is just something you do to be able to do the work you hate so you can enjoy the life you love kind of mentality. That is fine, but if you are the boss, who do you want to promote to a higher position? Valid point.
Yeah.
And so we talked about this a little bit before the podcast, and basically here was my little take on it, and then we'll kind of talk about it. So I had said, in this industry, especially in programming, it's pretty easy to do overtime. You get to sit at a nice computer, maybe have a cup of coffee, you're in the air conditioning, whatever. But the really cool thing about programming specifically, or any engineering, is that you're actually benefiting yourself. Like it is of benefit to you.
As
maybe
you solve these problems, you're learning new things.
Yeah. Usually not monetarily, because usually programming is salary, but it is benefiting you in like a experience/skill level. And that kind of goes back to what we talked about at the beginning of the podcast. And then you just kind of have to think like, well, you're very fortunate not to be doing ditch digging. I have a buddy that actually does that in North Dakota, and he does it in the -20, -40 degree Fargo, North Dakota weather.
Rough. That is rough.
He actually sent me a Snapchat one time where he was in Winnipeg in Canada, just right above North Dakota. I don't know, maybe a couple hours north. And they were digging some ditches there, and he sends me this Snapchat, and the little Snapchat filter or whatever has the temperature on it, and it says like -35 or something like that. And his snot is like frozen to his mustache. Oh, it was just so bad.
That's rough.
And so the point is, he works constant overtime. He may or may not get paid for. I mean, I think he probably does. He's probably hourly. But either way, laying extra or digging extra ditches for 4 hours every day in the -35 degree weather is not benefiting him.
Oh, yeah, in any kind of long run sense, like even if he's getting paid time, I mean, like the only way it might benefit him is working his way up and getting that promotion. So like in a sense it could be, but that still feels different than comparing that to what we do.
Right, because with what we do, it's benefiting both people, and not only do you get to kind of benefit your own expertise, and not only do you get to give your employer physically more hours, which they're going to like, but also you're kind of showing the employer that like, I really care about this. Like this is really important to me. And that's going to also go a long way. Like I know the two kind of go hand in hand, spending more time, being more passionate about it, whatever. But I mean, it's a valid point. Like the employer is going to look better on you for doing that. And it is of value to you. You're not just doing it for him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and like he says, who are they going to promote? If you're the guy that says like, oh, like I have to put my foot down. I got to go spend time with my family, which is fine. I can't work extra hours. Again, I think you should be able to do that, but recognize that is not going to get you promoted when the guy next to you is doing 20 extra hours every day.
Yeah. And then, no, I absolutely agree. Like, I absolutely agree. Who would you, there's nothing else to say. Who would you promote? The guy who, the person who keeps trying to improve themselves, or the person who is skating by?
Yeah.
Right. And now, okay, it's a little bit unfair what I said. Maybe you are coming in. So like, let's ignore the skating by aspect, because there are those people. Let's say you come in and you are super productive, but you say, I'm only going to work 8 hours. That's fine, right? But still, this person who's putting in more time and getting better, there's a chance they could overpass you at some point, and you just have to realize that.
Yep.
Yeah.
His next point, which kind of goes along with this same guy, he says, I like to work with passionate people. These people keep improving themselves at incredible short amount of time. Weird grammar. They are not satisfied with their current level and constantly seek out knowledge to grow. I like the first statement. I like to work with passionate people.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely.
We're the same way. Nothing's worse than sitting next to somebody that just wants to work 9 to 5 and get out and not put in any extra effort. And it's kind of nauseating, and it's kind of also contagious.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. The negativity can be contagious, yeah.
Absolutely. I told Amaya this. She had this job where she worked at this doctor's office, and I don't think in and of itself the work was that bad or the office was that bad. It was just that everybody there was just miserable, and it was contagious. And I would kind of think, why is it actually that bad? You tell me what's going on, and it seems like everybody just has a bad attitude, but what is bad about the work or the office? Nothing. It seems like everything's fine.
Yeah.
The doctor was maybe a little bit of a jerk. But the point is that other human beings can affect your outlook on things, affect your attitude about something. And again, I would rather work with super passionate people that want to move. Can you imagine if there was somebody like that was just like this, whatever, and they work at NASA during the moon launch or something?
Yeah, I guess this is cool. Whatever.
Yeah, but at 5 o'clock I need to leave.
I did work at a company like that, where it was just because I remember coming in, being super pumped like how I usually am, and everyone was older than me. One guy wasn't older than me, but everyone was older than me, and in general they had 10 or 15 years of experience in the programming industry. They looked down on me a little bit because I was just a teacher, so that's fine. But I still came in. I said, yeah, let's work hard. We can make this thing really cool. And they're just like, nah, I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
And so I worked hard. I worked on the weekends, and then a year and a half later, I got a job paying me $20,000 more.
Yeah.
So, winner.
Yeah. I like one Dennis guy that we work with. I definitely need to get him on the podcast. One thing that he said the other day that I thought was really cool was, I think he's 31 now. So you're even still ahead of him a little bit. But the point is, he's very I think he knows what he wants out of life. He has a pretty clear vision of where he wants to be 10 years from now. And he told me, he said, age discrimination in the programming industry is a very real thing. Once you get above the 45, 50 mark, you just don't see those people in most jobs. It's mostly younger people in their 20s and 30s. And he said, or where was I going with this? I think he was basically saying I realize that I'm going to be coming up on that in the next 15 years or so. And so basically what I'm trying to do right now is just really work hard, really earn a really cool position at a company, because I recognize that that's going to happen, and I can solve that problem now. I can solidify myself now, maybe even learn the skills to build your own business or something like that, and just choose to be really excited, really passionate about what you're doing right now, and grow yourself so that you don't have to worry about that later on.
Well, the other, I think there could be two things. Yes, I got two ideas coming at me at one time. One thing is, maybe the reason you don't see those people is because they have gotten promoted into managerial positions.
Right.
So that's one. The other thing is, and this is where it might be age discrimination or whatever, but I have met a lot of people who get stuck in their ways, or the fact is, programming changes a lot. iOS changes every year, right? I was doing iOS programming 10 years ago, 100% in Objective-C, and now we do Swift and Swift UI, and we got package managers and stuff like that, right? So, I'm willing to change and to learn, but I think that there's a lot of people who, whether it is young people or old people, but there's people who have learned it one way, and because they don't want to spend time outside of work, they might their skills slip, basically, right? And eventually, and actually, I did work with another guy at one of my jobs, and I think he was working in like COBOL
Mm-hmm.
still, and he had a pretty secure. He was the only person on at that company on that project. He had helped build it like years ago, and he just had a job security until they said, "Yeah, we're replacing that engine."
Yeah, shocker.
Yeah, in the next couple of years. So I saw him. He was on. We had Pluralsight at that company, but he was on Pluralsight learning Java.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, I don't think he was in any danger of getting fired because he had worked with the company for like a long time, 20 years or something, 15, 20 years. But like because he wasn't increasing his skills, even on the side at any point, that was the only thing he knew how to do. So he can't suddenly go over and say, "Hey, I'm going to jump on the Laravel project or I'm going to jump on the mobile app stuff." He's like, "Well, I know how to do this thing. I know how to do this one thing." It was job security until it's not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and at some point, everybody's going to get there, including you and I, when we're 55, 60. We're not going to want to be like spending the hours and hours and hours.
Yeah.
Getting close to the end of your life, you want to spend it with people and whatever.
Yeah.
And so I guess, like I said, Dennis's message to me the other day was just profound because it's like, yeah, it's really important to recognize that your priorities are going to change. And that kind of goes back to what my dad said, work hard now so you don't have to later.
Yeah.
Prepare yourself for that. Be passionate right now. Get into it. Spend the extra time. Do the overtime. Increase your skill. Get so good that they can't ignore you.
Absolutely. My favorite book.
And then you're set up for success later on.
Yeah.
Let's do like maybe one more of these. We'll kind of
cool.
just go through one more. Okay, so yeah, here's one. This guy I think is like a self-proclaimed junior developer. So he says, "Yep, I do a lot of overtime that I feel is needed to compensate for my lack of experience and how much I know, etc.
Great attitude.
Logically, I get that it is overtime, that it is work, but the inner pressure still makes me do this to try to deliver at the same pace as all the other developers."
Mm-hmm. It makes I agree with him
because I think his point is that, and this goes back like your guy that you were just talking about, Randy.
Yeah.
His bargaining power right now is his skill, expertise, and experience.
Yeah, I can design this better, or I can program this faster than somebody 10 years younger than me.
Yeah. And so this guy or a junior developer, your bargaining power is work ethic. I'm willing to work hard. I'm willing to work long hours. I'm willing to put in extra work.
You're going to pay me junior dev salary, and I'll deliver it at roughly like mid-level speed because I'm secretly putting in double the hours, or hopefully not double, but like whatever it is, right? Like that does make sense.
Can we talk about, actually, I didn't plan on talking about this, but can I pull up that article that I sent you the other day at work? Because I feel like it kind of applies. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
He says, I'll link this one too. The article's called Holy Expletive, I Suck at Job Interviews. And he's just talking about how he was like never all that, I don't know. Like
By the way, I think I suck at job interviews too. It's hard.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in general, they're hard, and I hate the way the interviews are structured, but it's a reality of life.
That's
so
what it is, yeah.
He says, anyway, I gained an appreciation for people who do low-paid work that is honestly much more difficult than anything I do in my corporate IT communications role. You have to get to work on time, be there for 8 hours continuously, only take breaks when scheduled, actually be there rather than work from home, stay constantly in motion, and do a number of things quickly and well in rapid succession. It's effing hard. I may have hacked it back when I was 15, but now that I think about it, I don't think I'm currently qualified to work at even Tim Hortons coffee place. One of the great oddities of capitalist society is that we don't actually compensate people based on the difficulty of the work. If this were so, I'd be making minimum wage while those Timmy's heroes in pleated pants would be making $80K a year minimum. Capitalism is dumb. So, without getting into an argument about whether or not capitalism is dumb, because I feel like that's a pointless argument, the point is that at least in most capitalist or like, I'm going to use the word fair society, you're going to be compensated based on how much value you bring to the company.
Yeah. Well, so the very first thing that I sent to you was, we don't compensate people on their hard work. We don't compensate people. The employer compensates you.
Yeah.
And that is based on how much value you bring them. That's just the fact.
Right.
Like we don't compensate you as a society. You're getting paid by a single person or the corporate entity.
Yeah, and so the reason that I bring up this article, because in a kind of indirect sort of way, it relates to what we've been talking about, which is that the reason that Tim Hortons or even the junior developer job, the reason that they don't pay well and you're expected to work extra hard is because it's kind of you're a dime a dozen. Like there's a bunch of
There's
people
so many
out there.
people who can also do those. Like there is skills involved, and there's some people who wouldn't meet those skills.
Yeah.
But there's so many people because it's not the same as like knowing how to build your own like networking service on iOS.
Yeah.
It's not the same. Like that's going to take years.
Yeah, this idea that like we should compensate people based on
Like physical labor.
caloric output. I mean,
Yeah,
I
that's
you
a
know
good
what I
way to
mean?
put it,
Like that's kind of ridiculous, and that's kind of not like representative of the society that we're trying to create. We want to create a society of really smart people. Really smart people bring a lot of value to the world that we live in.
Yeah.
If you're working at Tim Hortons, unfortunately, well, it's a stepping stone. And
nothing
again,
wrong with it.
I still think everybody should do that. I worked at McDonald's, and I think it was the best thing I ever did.
Yeah.
It helped me a ton in both realizing what I think I'm worth, but also realizing like these are the people that make society function, and this is their role in it, and this is whatever. It's kind of your first introduction into business and like whatever. So, anyways, yeah, the point is that we're not paying people based on how much work they actually do. We're paying people on really the supply of these people and the demand for these people. And right now there's a huge demand for really talented software engineers, but there's not a massive supply of them.
Well, yeah. Oh, and you could even look at it like that. Like it's not about just the physical labor, because look at some of the richest people in the world. This is controversial to a certain extent, but like look at Bill Gates. He's not a strong guy. He probably wouldn't last, very long just digging ditches. It's physical. Right?
Yeah.
But like
he's brought billions of dollars in value to the world.
He's
hundreds of
impacted the
billions.
world so much. Same with, obviously to everybody. Steve Jobs did the exact same thing.
Yep.
Right? Like the company that he founded, the two companies that he founded, three actually, Pixar as well. Like a lot of entertainment and jobs there. But everyone walks around with their iPhones, and that has brought billions of dollars of value to all these other companies.
We have jobs because of it.
I have a job, you have a job because of it, absolutely.
Yep.
And it's like one or a small amount of people's ideas brought that value. It wasn't, and then of course somebody had to build the circuits.
Yeah.
That's true, which I couldn't do that either, but somebody had to run the machines that built the circuit. So like there's jobs there, but it wasn't like these people are so rich not because they worked like they burnt more calories or they worked physically more hard than other people. They either had the skills or they took the risk or they did the actual, it's debatable as well, but I would say like the actual hard work of coming up with that idea and executing on that idea. Those are rare.
Yeah.
Those are rare. No, like building, installing a shower door is not rare. And like this, and I could do it pretty fast. And so like maybe my skill at it was pretty good, but like being able to do that isn't rare. Being able to come up with the idea of what if we made personal computers out of these hobby kits, right? And then take on some take out a loan so that we could build more, so that we could like there's a whole like
take on the risk.
Yeah. Like that is rare.
Yeah. So just because this is a topic about like how capitalism works, there are like people out there. I don't want this to get political or controversial, so I'm just gonna like clarify why I'm saying what I'm saying. There are people out there that say like maybe, for example, socialism or something, because we're a smarter society and we're very wealthy as a society, that could benefit everybody better. That's let's table that argument and not really talk about it. What I'm saying about capitalism is that capitalism is just what people would naturally do if they were just given the freedom to trade however they wanted to trade. Their skill for this, their product for that. It's just what people would naturally do. And the reason I'm saying this is because when a Tim Hortons employee or a McDonald's employee gets paid $8 an hour, we're just doing a fair trade. You're saying that you're willing to work for that, and I'm willing to give you a job to do, and so cool. We make this transaction happen. And in programming, at all levels of the programming spectrum, it's the same thing. Like as a junior developer, you can't go out and demand $200,000 a year because if given the opportunity to trade freely, nobody thinks that you're bringing that much value to their company.
Yeah. A perfect example was when I got my first job in Vegas, because I think I told you I was making about 72 or 75 even by the time I finished DigiPen. So I came here and I thought, well, I'm a programmer, I should make 85,000 or whatever, right? And I only did one job interview and I wasn't willing to take it. Or no, I mean I was willing to take it. I wanted to get a job as soon as possible when I came to America. They did not give me what I was asking for. They gave me quite a bit less. And I said, oh, okay. But I still took it. So maybe I could have been without a job for a couple. Maybe the next interview would have landed me something more than I had asked for. Or maybe I would have been out of a job for a year sticking to that number that I absolutely wanted. Right? Instead, I thought, well, it's better for me to get a job like lower than I was hoping for, and the next one that I look for will give me more money.
Yeah.
Right? And because now I'll have the actual skills. The reason this company isn't paying me is because I don't have the actual skills. Cool. Pay me. Pay me less than I expected to get the actual skills, and then we'll see where it goes. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess to like summarize, you've kind of got this like triangle of developer value. So you've got like your actual expertise, what you know. You've got on the other corner how much time you're willing to put in, right? And then lastly, you've got like, and this is kind of a more broad one, like your passion and or like domain knowledge, because that kind of comes into play too after you've been somewhere for a while. And so you've kind of got all those things working for you, and you can use all of those to negotiate and bargain for whatever salary you want. And when you're in the beginning, you just don't have the first one. You just don't have the expertise. The triangle's
really short.
That little pillar of the triangle is really short. So you've got really one to get the job. And you should recognize this. You've got one piece of bargaining power, which is work ethic and how much work I'm willing to put in. You can grow this one over here. You can grow the domain knowledge and the expertise of this particular application over time, and I would suggest doing that. If you can get in somewhere and spend 2 or 3 years there, you're growing this pillar, you're continuing to bring value at this pillar, and this pillar over here, or this corner is growing. And so just recognize where you fall on all those, and when you get a new job, everybody's missing this one. But if your expertise is super high, then they can look past that until
because they can assume, you can gain the domain knowledge.
You can gain the domain knowledge, and just depending on also how extreme you are on the expertise scale, the work ethic might not even really matter. Like they might say like, oh, you want a good work-life balance. We're willing to give you that. We're willing to let you do 8 hours and be done, because we know that during those 8 hours, your expertise is so high that
when somebody is an expert, it is true that like somebody who's really an expert at something can, let's talk about code very specifically. They can write something quicker with less bugs and possibly more flexible. So you are your output is actually different. So it could be that you are doing more, because I've heard a lot of people say this, like I do more in like 4 hours than most people do in 12 hours.
Yeah.
Like for whatever the concept is.
Yeah.
Right. And like if your expertise is high enough, then like maybe they're like, okay, like let's say my buddy, for instance, who said I don't really do crunch. His expertise is so high that like he does such good work that it doesn't need to be redone and is bug free. Oh, cool. Okay, no problem.
Yeah, I mean that's the interesting thing about programming, is that as a junior developer, you can. It's not like digging ditches where maybe somebody can do it faster, but at the end of the day, it gets done.
Yeah.
And it gets done the way that it should be. Programming as a junior developer, you have to recognize that you're just not all there yet. Like, you can write bugs, you can write code that's not flexible.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I've definitely seen examples of some piece of code, like if you're paying this engineer $40,000 a year, well, because of the way that he built it, it took 10 times or literally like 100 times maybe as long to grow that feature as it would have if you just hired a senior developer. And although their salary was 3 times as much,
you're winning. Yeah, it's cheaper in the long run.
You're very much winning. And so that's why I'm saying, like, as a junior developer, you have to recognize that that's what you're up against. Like, you are so much less efficient than a super senior developer. And so you have to find other ways to bring value to the team.
Yeah. It's not, the job isn't writing for loops and if statements.
Yeah.
Like, the job is like more complicated systems that sometimes, like, my students, for example, wouldn't always understand. Like, why would I do it? Why would I do it this way? Well, because it can be changed easier, right? So it's like, if you think that it's just for loops, then you got a lot to learn.
Yeah, you got a ton to learn. I think that's a good place to kind of wrap it up.
I think so. I hope it's controversial. I hope somebody comes into the comments and says, overtime's garbage.
Yeah.
Cool. Like, we can talk about it more.
Hey, so here's the thing, just in the name of like being transparent, the cool thing about the podcast is that we're kind of starting to get like a little bit more traffic. There's obviously no doubt. It'd be funny if somebody's watching this a year from now and maybe we're the next big thing. We're not right now. But like, the thing that we're trying to do here is just keep consistently releasing content, because we're hoping that whether it's the YouTube algorithm or anything else, that over time, after we've been doing this for a year or 2 years, it kind of starts to flow. But the exciting thing is we're starting to get more views. We're starting to get more comments. Awesome. It feels like things are starting to kind of look up. I think the next thing that maybe we need to do is like get somebody that can help us with like SEO and stuff like that. I think we got a lot of good content, and a lot of the people that do watch the podcast really like it. So I'm pretty excited. And we're just going to keep doing it.
Cool.
Ain't going to stop. But yeah, let's get some comments. Let's get to talking about it.
Follow us on Twitter.
Discord.
Yell at me on Twitter. That's fine.
Yeah. Well, you know what we should do? Let's do this for the next episode. We should go spend this next week going on, I don't know, Reddit or Quora or Twitter or whatever. And let's like screenshot some little conversations, and we'll come in and talk about them on the podcast.
Cool.
I think that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Episode 20.
20.
Wrapped up.
Yeah, I love it.
In the books. Yeah, that's it. And this was a fun episode.
It was a good episode. Yeah.
It was good.
We can just talk.
Yeah, our wives think that's for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for watching, everybody. Episode 20, and we will see y'all next week.
That's badass.